There are many different ways to organize a business, but one of the most popular ways is through what is called a corporation. One interesting thing about corporations is that the managers and the CEO do not actually own the business. They simply help run the business. Oftentimes, CEOs will hold stock, which represents partial ownership in the company, but company ownership is not essential to their role as CEO. The owners of a corporation are the shareholders who purchase shares of stock that represent partial ownership in the company. On the other hand, another popular form of business organization is what is called the sole proprietorship. There are many differences between sole proprietorships and corporations, but the only aspect of interest here is the ownership roles. For a sole proprietor, one person both owns and runs the business. The focus of this video is going to be on corporations and how to account for the issuance of the most common type of ownership shares called common stock. There are three main types of common stock. By far the most common type is what is called par value stock. This is stock that has an assigned dollar amount or par value, such as $1, $5, or $10 per share, which is specified in the charter when the corporation is formed. This amount typically represents the minimum legal amount that the company can issue stock for. You may also encounter stated value stock, which, for the purposes of this class, is essentially the same thing as par value stock. The journal entries for stated value stock will be identical to those of par value stock, with the exception of the naming of the accounts, which will be explained later. The third type of common stock is what is called no par value stock. The advantage of this type of stock is that it can be sold for any value and is not limited to a minimum amount like stated or par value stocks. So our first transaction is that the corporation issued 100 shares of $5 par value common stock for $500 cash. So we have some people who are investing $500 cash into the company in exchange for some ownership shares or common stock. So of course the company is going to be receiving cash, so we debit our cash account to increase it for $500. And then we have to recognize that the corporation is issuing common stock, so we credit our common stock account, which is an equity account and is going to increase with this credit. And we also list along with it the par value. So we have a $5 par value. And that's also going to be for $500. Next, in number 2, the corporation issued 100 shares of $5 par value common stock for $1,200 cash. So this is the exact same scenario that we had in number 1, except for the cash is $1,200, whereas it was $500 here. So in the first case, we issued the common stock at the par value, right? 100 times $5 gave us the $500 cash. And in this case, the corporation is issuing the shares at above the par value, right? 100 times $5 is $500, but we're actually issuing the shares at more than the $500, which would be at the par value. So that's just going to mean we're going to need an extra account when we do the journal entry here, and I'll show you how that's going to work. So first, we're still going to have our cash as the debit, and this time it's going to be for the $1,200 that the company is getting. We're still going to have the common stock, $5 par value, and we record only the amount that's at the par value. So 100 shares times $5 is going to be $500, just like in the first case. Now we need one more account down here, which is to account for the $700 difference between the cash and the common stock. So I can put the $700 right here as an additional credit. And the name of this account is paid in capital in excess of par value common stock. And this account has a very long name, but basically it's just recognizing that we issued these shares of common stock for a little bit more than the par value, and this amount is the amount that we issued it over the par value in total for the 100 shares. This is also an equity account, and these two accounts together are considered the contributed capital related to the common stock. Next, in number 3, we have the corporation, which issued 50 shares of $10 stated value common stock for equipment which was valued at $700. Now a quick note on the stated value stock before we get into this problem. Both number 1 and number 2 could have said stated value common stock, and the journal entries would have been exactly the same except for any time that we see the par value, we would just replace that with stated value. So in this case, the company is getting equipment instead of cash, as was the case in number 2. But the journal entry is going to be very similar. So instead of debiting the cash, we are going to be debiting equipment. and that's going to increase our equipment account by the amount that it's worth, and it's valued at $700. Next, we have to use the common stock $10 stated value instead of par value, and that's going to be for the $10 stated value multiplied by the number of shares. So 10 times 50 is going to give us $500. And then we need that paid in capital in excess of stated value this time, common stock, and that's for the leftover amount. 700 minus 500 gives us $200, which we need to balance this journal entry. In number 4, the corporation issued 70 shares of $5 par value common stock to its promoters in exchange for their services helping organize the company. The value of their work is estimated to be $1,000. So again, this is very similar to number 3 and number 2, but instead of getting cash or equipment, as in number 2 and number 3, in this case we are actually getting some services to help organize the company. So we're going to be using organization expenses as our debit, and that's for the value of their work, which is estimated to be $1,000. And then we're going to have the common stock $5 par value, just like we always do. 70 shares times the $5 par value is going to be $350. Now, of course, they don't balance again, so we need that additional account, which is paid in capital in excess of par value, common stock, and in this case, that's going to be for $650. We have one more journal entry to complete, and that's that the corporation issued 200 shares of no par stock at $10 each. So this stock has no par value attached to it. And the way we deal with that is we debit the cash account for the number of shares multiplied by the price per share, which is 200 multiplied by 10, which gives us $2,000. And then we credit the common stock no par value account, also for $2,000. And there should never be any need for the paid in capital account in the no par value transactions. Alright, that wraps up our journal entries related to the issuance of common stock.